Whoa. Can you believe that this is officially the 100th episode of the Dispatches from the Forest podcast? I sure can't. This podcast started literally in my bedroom closet and has since been recorded in at least 3 states, 4 houses, and several places in between, and hopefully improving along the way. It's been downloaded and listened to all over the world. And I mean, yeah, I'm not getting millions of listeners or anything like that, but you know what? I am perfectly happy getting a couple hundred a month because that's more than enough to keep me going. So thank you for tuning in and giving me a chance to share things that I'm passionate about. We've covered a lot of ground in the previous 99 episodes. Some things we've even covered more than once. And just when I think I've run out of things to talk about, something new pops up and I get inspired all over again. So what are we talking about today? Well, as a wise man once said, I've got 99 episodes, but a mink ain't one. So that's what we're talking about today, mink, and a couple of the other mighty Morphin Mustelids that we haven't covered yet, the ermine and the long-tailed weasel. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the 100th episode of the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. On Dirt Dispatches a couple of episodes ago, I mentioned finding a road-killed mink near Dispatches HQ. It was actually the second one that I'd seen there, both of them road-killed in roughly the same spot, but about a year apart. That very same day, we were visiting friends down in Colorado Springs, and they mentioned seeing an ermine in their backyard, which reminded me of when, in June of last year, I spotted a long-tailed weasel not far from home. Now, what do these 3 animals have in common? Well, they're all mustelids. Now, I've talked about some mustelids before. Mustelids are members of the weasel family. In previous episodes, I've talked about otters and skunks and badgers and wolverines. It always amazes me that skunks, which are relatively shy and timid, are fairly closely related to badgers and wolverines, who are kind of known for their ferociousness. That is quite a spectrum of both size and assertiveness. There are 2 living mustelid species that carry the mink moniker, the European mink and the American mink. And even though they're both mustelids and similar in build and behavior, they're actually not that closely related. Now, just to make things more confusing, American mink do have established populations in Europe and South America, but these places are not their native range. So mostly I'll be talking about the American mink, which have been highly valued by the fashion industry for their fur. And because of that, they were both trapped in the wild and later raised in captivity. Mink oil has also been used in medical products, cosmetics, and to treat, preserve, and waterproof leather items. Now, populations of American mink in Europe and South America became established through releases from mink farms, either accidentally by animals escaping or intentionally by the mink farmers themselves, which tends to happen when these enterprises become unprofitable, or by well-meaning but maybe misguided animal rights activists. American mink are thought to have contributed to the decline of their smaller, less hardy European cousins through competition. But wait a minute, back up. What are these mustelids? What do mink look like? Well, I'm glad you asked. Mink are long and slender. Think ferret, but bigger. A wild American mink is about 2 feet or 60 centimeters long, plus another 5 to 9 inches of tail, and they weigh in at about 1.5 to 2 pounds. Although farm-raised mink are bred to be larger, and they can get up to 7 pounds. They have a thick, soft, lustrous coat that's usually a rich dark brown color and consists of a dense underfur overlaid with stiffer, glossy guard hairs. Problems with the fur industry aside, it's not hard to see why they were so highly prized. On a bit of a side note, there used to be a 3rd species of mink, the sea mink, that lived on the coast of New England. The sea mink was larger than the American mink, owing to its rich seafood diet, and is thought to have had a body 3 feet long with a tail that added another 10 inches. Now, we don't really know for sure because they're only known from remains. These mink were even more highly sought after because they were bigger, and thanks to unregulated hunting, they were driven to extinction in the late 1800s. The last recorded sea mink was killed in 1880, so it's possible that small populations survived, but not much past the early 1900s. Now, like a beaver or an otter, a mink coat, when it's left on the mink where it belongs, helps it survive in aquatic environments. They live near water and are seldom found far from riverbanks, lakes, or marshes. Even when roaming, they prefer to follow streams or even ditches. Mink, like all of the weasels, are predatory carnivores. In their natural habitat, they eat fish, crustaceans, small mammals, eggs, birds, and even rabbits. In fact, it seems they like rabbits so much that they're one of the few reasons mink will stray away from the shore. Now, mink are territorial. Territory tends to be long and narrow, stretching along shorelines, and the territories of males and females may have some overlap. But males don't generally tolerate other males getting in their turf. Usually, a territory will have one or two core areas where the mink spends most of its time, generally a spot with a good supply of food. The mink can spend several days at a time in these core areas, but it will also make excursions to the boundaries of its territory, probably to check for signs of intruders. Now, all of the mustelids we're talking about today are interesting in that they displayed delayed implantation of the embryo after mating. For mink, the true gestation period is about 39 days, but the embryo may take a break from developing for a variable period of time. When you factor in this gestational staycation, mink gestations can last nearly twice as long, up to 76 days, but 45 to 52 is about average. Mink will have 1 litter per year of 6 to 10 kits, and lifespan in the wild is usually less than 3 years. Okay, now let's take a look at the ermine, also known as a stoat. Like mink, there are 2 flavors of ermine. The Eurasian ermine, which, despite his name, is not just native to Eurasia, but is also native to Alaska and Arctic Canada. And then there's the American ermine, which is found throughout, well, most of the rest of the United States, excluding the Great Plains and the Southeast. This would have been what our Colorado friends saw in their yard. Ermine are smaller than mink. They're described as having a body plan typical of weasels, short legs, a long body and neck, and a small triangular head with short round ears. Unusual among carnivores, the size of ermine tends to decrease proportionally with latitude, in contradiction to the Bergman rule. I've talked about the Bergman rule before, which holds that generally the size of a species tends to be smaller the closer you get to the equator. Ermines, though, flip that script and tend to be smaller in the more northern part of their range. With ermines, sexual dimorphism in size is pronounced. Males are roughly 25% larger than females and 1.5 to 2 times their weight. But they're smaller than mink by about half. Males average between 7.5 and 13 inches, females between 7 and 10.5 inches. The tail adds another 3 or 4 inches, and ermine weigh just 2 to 4 ounces, 60 to 110 grams. Color-wise, ermine are light brown on the top and white on the bottom with a black-tipped tail. Well, that's the color in the warmer months. In the winter, their coat is almost fully white, the exception being the black-tipped tail. This change in color is tied to photoperiod, a fancy word for the length of daylight, and starts earlier in the autumn and later in the spring at higher latitudes. American ermine prey on voles, shrews, young cottontails, chipmunks, and various species of mice. They also eat small birds, frogs, fish, and earthworms. Usually, the ermine kills its prey by biting it in the base of the skull. Now, given their small size, it's not surprised that they have plenty of their own predators too, including other mustelids like minks, martens, and fishers, not to mention bobcats, coyotes, large owls, and hawks. Being small and agile helps them evade these predators, while also allowing them to compete for some of the same prey, especially when that prey is more scarce. The retention of their black tail in the winter is also thought to be a defense against predators. The black tail is more likely to catch the predator's eye and prevent it from attacking the more vital areas of the ermine's body. Ermines live and find cover from predators in hollow spaces under logs, rocks, burrows, and even man-made structures. And they're known to take over a den from their prey and use the skin and fur of their prey as a lining for this usurped den. Points to the ermine for being totally metal. Now, generally, ermine are silent animals, but they can produce a range of sounds. Kits produce a fine chirping noise. Adults trill excitedly before mating and indicate submission through quiet trilling, whining, and squealing. When nervous, ermines might hiss, interspersed with sharp barks or shrieks. And aggressive sounds include prolonged screeching. Now, aggressive behavior in ermines is categorized into categories, for lack of a better term. First is a non-contact approach, which is sometimes accompanied by a threat display and vocalization from the approached animal. Second is a forward thrust, accompanied by a sharp shriek, usually done by an ermine defending a nest site or burrow. Nest occupation occurs when an ermine appropriates the nesting site of a weaker individual. And finally, there's kleptoparasitism, something I've mentioned in other episodes with other animals, which is when a dominant ermine steals a kill from a weaker one, usually after a fight. Submissive ermine express their status by either avoiding higher-ranking animals, fleeing, or making whining and squealing sounds. Now, ermine have large anal scent glands, as well as scent glands in their cheeks, belly, and flanks. When they're attacked or being aggressive, the ermine releases the contents of these anal glands, producing a strong, musky odor. According to one source, this odor is distinct from that of least weasels. But if you can distinguish between the two by smell, please drop me a line and let me know how you acquired this skill. I am super curious. Mating takes place in the summer, and like mink, the implantation of the embryo may be delayed for a variable period of time. But in ermine, this period of time is much, much longer, up to 9 or 10 months. So again, gestation period is variable. For European ermine, it runs about 300 days, but for American ermine, it's a little bit shorter, about 255 days. This long gestation means that after mating in the summer, the kits won't be born until the following spring. Now, in the event of a severe winter, females can reabsorb embryos, and if conditions are bad enough, they may reabsorb the entire litter. Now, if they make it through the winter, litters average 4 to 7 kits, and dad is no help at all in raising them. Males take almost a year to reach sexual maturity, but females become sexually mature in just 3 to 4 weeks. What's really interesting about this is that ermine are born blind, deaf, toothless, and covered in a fine white or pinkish down. They don't start eating solid food until they're about 4 weeks old. The eyes open after 5 to 6 weeks, and they nurse until they're about 12 weeks old. So, if you're doing the math, female ermine becomes sexually mature while they're still blind, deaf, and hairless, and can in fact be mated before being weaned. This also means that female ermine spend most of their lives either pregnant or in heat. Average lifespan in the wild is about 1 to 2 years, but with a little luck, they can make it to the ripe old age of 7. Okay, finally, we're going to take a look at the weasel that I saw, the long-tailed weasel. Long-tailed weasel and ermine are very, very close in size, with the weasel being just slightly larger, ranging somewhere between 11 and 22 inches long, plus another 3 to 6 inches of tail, and weighing between 3 and 9 ounces. Like the ermine, in the summer they're brown on top, with a white or yellow-tinged underside and a black-tipped tail. But they also molt and turn white with yellow highlights in the winter, while again retaining that black-tipped tail. But unlike the ermine, which has thickly furred soles on its feet year-round, the long-tailed weasel's soles are naked in the summer. So basically, it goes barefoot in the summer. Cool. Long-tailed weasels are obligate carnivores and prefer their prey fresh or alive. They only eat carrion when they've stored it in their burrow themselves. They're fearless and aggressive hunters, and they might attack animals far larger than themselves. When stalking, the long-tailed weasel waves its head from side to side, trying to pick up the scent of its prey. Rodents are their primary prey, Although also on the menu are squirrels, chipmunks, shrews, moles, and rabbits. And the daily special can consist of small birds, eggs, reptiles, amphibians, fish, earthworms, and some insects. It hunts small prey by rushing at them and killing them with a bite to the head. With larger prey, like rabbits, the long-tailed weasel strikes quickly, taking its prey off guard. It grabs the nearest part of the animal it can and climbs on its body, maintaining its hold with its feet. The long-tailed weasel then maneuvers itself to inflict a lethal bite to the neck. Long-tailed weasels are sometimes thought to suck the blood of its prey, but this is not really true. After making a kill, it might lap up the blood, but it doesn't suck it like a vampire, as is often popularly believed. Heck, even vampire bats lap up blood, they don't suck it. With small prey, the weasel might even consume fur, feathers, flesh, and bones. When stealing eggs, the long-tailed weasel removes each egg from the nest one at a time, then carries it in its mouth to a safe location where it bites off the top and licks out the contents. If the weasel is feeding kits, they might carry it in their mouth all the way back to the den. Now, long-tailed weasels occasionally engage in surplus killing more than it can actually consume. This usually happens in the spring when the kits are being fed, and again in the autumn. Some of these surplus kills may be cached, but often they're left uneaten, and nobody really knows why. Predators of the long-tailed weasel include coyotes, foxes, bobcats, wolves, and lynx. Like other mustelids, long-tailed weasels give off a musky odor, especially when they're threatened or when looking for a mate. When leaving an area, they'll leave their odor behind by hauling their bodies across surfaces. This seems to be a way to discourage predators from coming back to that spot, and might indicate that the weasel considers it a safe place to return. When sensing danger, long-tailed weasels will climb a tree. Then they'll sit silent and motionless, watching their presumed predator. They'll keep their guard up like this until the predator leaves, and the weasel considers itself safe to go back about its business on the ground. Again, long-tailed weasels mate in the summer. But also again, implantation of the fertilized egg is delayed until about March. So while the gestation period technically lasts about 10 months, the actual embryonic development takes place only during the last 4 weeks. And once again, this is an adaptation to time the birth for spring, when prey is most abundant. Litters are 5 to 8 kits, who are born partially naked, blind, and weigh about the same as a hummingbird. But they grow incredibly fast. By the age of 3 weeks, the kits are well furred, can crawl around the nest and eat meat. At 5 weeks, their eyes open, and a week later, the kits emerge from the nest and start accompanying their mother on hunting trips. By fall, the kits are fully grown and the family disbands. In the wild, long-tailed weasels can live 6 years or more. And with that, we'll bring episode 100 to a close. If you'd like to support the next 100 episodes, consider becoming a patron. Check out all the details at patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest. You can also donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd, or using PayPal and my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. And of course, that email address works if you want to, send me an email. I'm always open to suggestions, questions, or comments. And if you know how to smell the difference between an ermine and a short-tailed weasel. Check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatchesfromtheforest. Click on products, get yourself some awesome Dispatches from the Forest merch. Finally, you can follow Dispatches from the Forest on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission. Do it and I'll be on you like a long-tailed weasel on a rabbit.